Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. It's been a good couple of weeks since my last video, which feels like a very long time. I almost feel rusty. And what I've been doing in the meantime is taking a bit of a break, working on my own meditation as usual, and still working with a few people who have reached out. And out of that work from the past week or two, a certain theme developed, which I thought was worth sharing via video, because it has become quite an active little trope during sessions, and the clearer it has become in my head, the clearer I've been able also to convey that. So the theme is that of identity, and in the videos that I was making a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about pure being, right? Like this notion of somehow reverting back to the pure fact that we are, or the pure fact that we have experience, as opposed to getting caught in the content of that experience or the happenings that take place. And I suppose as a byproduct of tapping more and more into that space of pure being, which is blank but undeniable, everything else starts to appear as a movement of the mind or a movement in the mind. And that includes the sense of self, so the very sense of who we believe ourselves to be. So I believe I might have mentioned in my last video that the sense of self is just another mental sense, like the sense of smell or the sense of touch, except it's far more intimate, far more compelling, far less visible. So it's more in the background, is where you're coming from. And at the same time, if you touch on pure being, then that sense of self starts to or rather you start to develop the capacity to see the sense of self as indeed something that arises in the mind. Now, this is supremely important because on some level, anyone who reaches out or anyone who starts to do spiritual work is essentially trying to feel better. There's a drive to, hey, I know where I am right now, and I want to be more balanced, more peaceful, more joyful. I want to not be bogged down with these problems in my life, things that bring me down or things that I've always felt are not okay. And what's interesting as you progress down this path of cultivation is you come to notice that problems are not really there to be solved. Right? So you typically reach out because somebody will help you solve your problems, or you embark on a journey or in practices so that they help you solve your problems. Problems rather need to be outgrown. And of course, some problems are outgrown as part of our regular maturation as human beings from childhood to adulthood. Other problems are outgrown thanks to life experience. But the more fundamental problems or the more fundamental questions that we have and doubts and issues are typically not resolved through life experience on its own or to just regular advice that we might get. Because they are ingrained in what we believe ourselves to be. In other words, problems of a deep nature are a mirror, or they reflect to us something about our deep identity that is overlooked or incomplete. And therefore, it's only on the level of identity that you can tackle the problem, that you can find not a solution to the problem, but a resolution to what is otherwise really just a situation. But it is turned into a problem because we have adopted an identity, and for that identity to work, of course, it needs to have boundaries, or it needs to have limitations. And the problem is seen as something that falls outside of what those limitations are able to engage with, or contend with, or accept. So identity, as I've said a few times in the past, has a payoff. It allows you to define yourself, to use it as a vehicle to interact with the world. It allows you to, if nothing else, do away with existential dread or big existential questions of not knowing who you are or what the whole thing is about. The moment you have an identity, those questions are immediately answered and no longer need to be dealt with, or you don't need to contend with this sort of spaced out, I don't know what's what type of feeling. That's what an identity does for you. That's the payoff. But unfortunately, the price of the identity is limitation. And not just limitation in the sense of, oh, I can do everything and be everything I want type of thing, but limitation in the sense that life is almost infinite in its variety, and it will bring to you situations that collide with that limited sense of identity. And when that happens, you'll call it a problem. And you'll call it a problem because that sense of identity has established itself with boundaries and opinions and a bundle of emotions that lack the capacity to embody the new situation that is coming towards you. So that lack of capacity is felt as desire and fear. It's felt really as a sense of lack, as if something is wrong about you or something is not okay. It might come also with guilt and shame behind it. It's really pouring down here in Amsterdam today. Hope it doesn't mess up the sound. And from there you can see that every problem, no matter if it's a big existential problem or just a serious doubt that you have or a decision that you don't know how to tackle, is really a problem of identity. It's a problem of pure being or bare awareness having concretized itself with a set of opinions and emotions which are very embodied in nature. And it feels cozy to be somebody, definitely. But once this has taken place, whenever a situation doesn't, or rather, whenever a situation requires attitudes, ways of thinking, ways of either putting up with or ignoring or engaging with a certain type of reality, if that reality falls outside of the way that the identity is defined, then you will feel the bite of that. You will feel a sense of lack. It feels like I don't have the capacity to deal with this. I don't know what to do about this. I lack the will, the determination, the focus, the knowledge, in more mundane terms, the intelligence, the looks, the money, to deal with this situation. So this kind of exploration is very difficult to do when pure being as a base has not been found, because when you have not found pure being as a base, every identity that you embody actually really does feel like you, right? Like there's no degree of separation between pure being awareness and whatever identity comes about. So that for a long time, the only option available is to kind of acquire an identity of a spiritual seeker, or somebody who's doing the work of observing him or herself for quite a while. And that activity of observation is going to bring a lot of our different identities to the foreground. We're going to realize that we are not in fact a person, but we are a constellation of identities, all of which arise during difficult or easy situations with people we know, situations with people we don't know, people we like, people we dislike, people we feel cozy and familiar with, people with whom we need to keep a professional persona towards. And so through observation, you come to realize, wait a second, now I thought I was someone, but as it turns out, I'm all these different things, and you'll see how different identities have really different ideas about how life should be lived or what your limitations are. Yeah. And the way you tend to think about this is, well, like, oh, that day I was in a good mood and I felt like I could do anything, but today I feel really limited. Well, when you were feeling like you could do anything, it really felt like you. And when you feel really limited, it really feels like you. And after enough observation between the two and between all these other identities, you come to realize that the inevitable realization that arises is, I'm none of them. But you must be incredibly watchful for that realization to arise. Nisargadatta Maharaj says that if you keep an eye out on your false identity, you will uncover it pretty soon, because the gaps are everywhere to be seen. And the first time I read that, I'm like, I don't see any gaps. It just feels like me. But you start observing long enough, and this will definitely start to be the case. You go like, oh, right now. So if you have a doubt, you go like, oh, I'm doubting about this. What should I do? And if you have done the work, you would take a step and go, oh, right now there is a self that feels in doubt. It's not me, but it really does feel like me, but it's a self, right? And then the next moment you'll feel empowered or energized, and you go like, oh, well, right now there's a self that feels empowered and energized. Okay, so is that degree of disidentification from the current content of the mind, which is not just an idea, but it's a very embodied content, right? Identification tends to happen mostly with things that matter, with things that register on an emotional level, and therefore register on a bodily level. That's where it feels like you. And the more you do this kind of work, you would come to realize inevitably that every problem is a problem of mistaken identity. Every problem is a problem of pure awareness embodying a certain train of thought that feels very real and feels very much like you, feels identical to awareness at that point in time, which colors your entire reality in that moment. I was talking to someone a couple of days ago who is attempting to quit smoking, and it has become very clear for this person that he makes a vow at the start of the week on a Monday morning saying, well, you know, this week I think I can see it through. I'll stop smoking at least for a week. And he believes it in his bones, wants to do it, is completely convinced that he's going to do it. By Tuesday evening, he finds himself thinking, you know what, I'm just going to have a ciggy on a Tuesday evening. What's the harm? You know, what is with all these big promises or whatever? I think I'm in control of the habit. I'm just going to light up. He lights up. Now, it's easy to become confused about this. It's easy to become enthusiastic on Monday and really believe that you're going to do it. It's easy to become guilt-ridden and feel shameful about the fact that you broke the promise, or maybe it feels like bravado to break the promise because you're, let's say, stating your independence and your freedom to smoke if you damn well please. But the work that we're trying to do here is to see the entire thing and become aware, oh, these are two selves. One wants to quit the smoke and the other one wants to assert its independence and believes it's not that big a deal. And neither of them are me. That's the solution, as a matter of fact. That's the real solution, is you are neither of these. You are none of them. And of course, this leads to a bit of a morass. And it's very scary to go into that existential, oh, I don't know who I am or what's going on here. But that void of identity is completely full of being. And so that which the mind considers to be like this eerie space in which I'm not and nothing is, and I'm lonely and bored and confused and completely impotent, is, if allowed, is completely filled with just pure being, which is precisely what you've been missing out on, of course. So I suppose the gist of this video is an invitation to take the opportunity of taking every doubt, every problem, or everything that is creating friction in your life, and try to unveil the identity behind this, the sense of I behind it all. It's not a neo-Advaita trope, these new non-dualists who go like, well, who's the one who's in pain? Problem solved. No, it's not about that. The identity really needs to be found and felt, because the identity is fear-based, so that fear needs to be allowed to surface and be properly faced and embodied. But it's a good exploration nonetheless, and it's an invitation to realize that the problems in our lives are self-defined, because they are defined by our identity and they grow out of our identity. I hope that resonates. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the topic. And until the next video, keep in mind that your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the channel more available to others who could benefit from the content if you find it valuable. I'll be back with more pretty soon. Cheerio. Bye.